Hello, friends. Happy
neighbors.
and neighbors. Happy Labor Day. Hope you had the day off. Hope you got to have some fun. Hope you got to relax. We are really excited. We had a really super fun and busy week last week, so I don't think we did many live videos, but good to see you all today. We want to talk about how to get rid of drama from your life and create faster results, especially if you obviously these pages are focused on German medicine. If you are dealing with a conflict, how can you kind of like bust out of this conflict that's been going on and move on? So get from like this survival mode into a space of thriving, where you are like living your life and creating more and more of what you want, instead of just kind of like managing drama and trauma and the issues that you have going on. And one of the ideas, or one of the things that we were chatting about, we went on a walk today, is just how it's kind of a luxury that we have in modern society. And it's really the main issue with humans having conflicts, is we've got these big brains that can just think about so many different things. And when we lived in the animal kingdom, there just wasn't time to have drama. There just was other more pressing issues than worrying about stuff, or worrying how we, appear to other people, worrying about little petty things. And it's a lot of that stuff that kind of accumulates in this drama factory in our mind. And it's kind of how we spend our time a lot of times. If we don't have better things to do, a lot of our mental RAM, our headspace, gets filled up with dramas and worrying about the past and thinking about all sorts of things that are worrying you. Instead of moving directly towards what you want, we're spending a lot of time thinking about the things that we don't want. And so that's what we wanted to talk about today, is how can we start to guide our mental focus towards more of the things that we want to create and generate in our life, and not be spending so much time on the petty stuff, on the drama, on the stuff that's not getting us more of what we want, and it's actually keeping us physiologically like stuck in a state that we don't want to be in.
I keep looking over here because our dog is sitting by the door, and like a dog will sit and kind of open his mouth to pant and kind of cool off. But I've noticed that like if I look away and I look back at him, he'll shut his mouth every time. So his mouth hanging open and he's heavy breathing, and I look over at him and he closes his mouth for just a second, and so I can't stop doing that because it's a fun response to get.
It's super funny.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think one of these things is about like remembering that we're an animal, or remembering that there are some part of us that sort of responds in a really naturalistic sort of animal biological way. It responds in a really physical way. Most of the biological special programs, the fact that what's called a conflict shock is possible. Isn't that interesting? The fact that we have the capacity to experience a thing called a conflict shock. Why? That's not even necessarily something that's intuitively obvious. Like, why would an organism have the capacity to experience a thing called a conflict shock? And I think that a lot of times when you're kind of a new initiate into this way of thinking, and even if you're not really, actually, we start describing conflict shocks as kind of the origin of symptoms. It's kind of like the starting point of what then goes on to be recognized as disease, and what manifests as physical symptoms that are often debilitating or painful, or both sometimes. And then we start thinking, okay, so the conflict shock is bad. The conflict shock is a problem. The conflict shock is the issue. The conflicts are bad. How do we avoid the conflicts? How do we get rid of the conflicts? And it just turns into conflict is just another name for disease. That's just the new thing, and it's the same old thing, but it's just with a new word. And the interesting thing really is that the capacity to experience the conflict is itself an adaptive ability. It's an ability. It's not a liability. It's a feature. It's not a bug. Like in software, there's a difference, but sometimes there are features on software that make them irritating. Sometimes there are things like, for example, I use the Notes app on the iPad and the iPhone a lot, and one of the things that's an option is to draw pictures now. Rather than typing, you can actually draw, and it's probably pretty cool if you've got like a pen and that you like to do stuff like that. For me though, it's very irritating. It causes me a lot of problems because I accidentally open up a drawing template when I'm meaning just to I almost turned it off by accident, when I'm actually meaning just to type, and so that's a feature. But it's something I'm unconsciously, unintentionally activating, and therefore I'm doing it in a way that doesn't serve me, in a way that's not really consistent with what I want to do. Conflict shocks are kind of that way too. Like the fact that we have the capacity to experience this thing, and that our body has a capacity to respond with these biological special programs is actually something that is an asset in a sense. Was an asset anyway. There was a period of time when our world was entirely physical, when literally all we had to worry about were the things that were in front of us or not. You know what I'm saying? There's either a tiger there or there isn't. There's not a quarterly review. You know what I'm saying? I mean, probably about the closest thing that our kind of biological ancestors had to worrying about things down the line was perhaps changing seasons. And even then, it was pretty much like, it's getting cold, let's move somewhere else. It's getting cold, let's start a fire. It's getting cold, let's find a skin to put on or something like that, or a pelt or whatever. And so remembering, that the world in which our physical body developed its ability to respond was a world in which it was constantly responding to direct, immediate, real, not hypothetical, actual physical situations. Bears and tigers and maybe an infant that was died or was taken away or whatever, real stuff, not, oh God, I hope Johnny doesn't get kidnapped walking to school, but actually either everything's fine or it's not. There was a very kind of there was a realness to it. But now we live in this world where, in large part, we live in an artificial reality. We live in our imagination. We live not in the true reality of what's going on here. We live in this imaginal, projected reality of what we should have done and haven't done, what might go wrong, what's happening next week, what might happen next month. You know what I'm saying? We live wrapped up in that world. And if we get something that we want, we almost don't live in the reality of getting that thing. We live in the reality of, okay, how can we lose this, or what can go wrong, or how can this get messed up, and the body lives in this physical world, but your body is in the room that you're in. Your mind oftentimes is somewhere else. And it's interesting, in many cases, our experience, like our personal subjective experience, is what I call what it's like to be us, is determined more by what's going on with their mind than it is by what's going on with their body. So, for example, a person can be in no physical danger. They could be just seated on a bus or in their home or whatever, classroom, and their body is perfectly safe. There's nothing that's harming it, but their mind goes to a place of imagined danger, and then they start to have an anxiety attack, and they start freaking out. Now, what's interesting there is that the mind, the imagination, goes to a place, the mind, and experience tracks that movement of consciousness. Experience is not tethered to the physical body. Experience, really, in some senses, is pretty independent of the physical body. Experience is following the cues of the mind. So the mind goes to a place of worrying, of concern, because we got all this software, that we built in a context where there were tigers that were trying to get us, or I guess probably not tigers, but mostly probably other human beings that were trying to get us, and there were dangerous animals and all this different stuff. You had to watch out for, and you had to be aware in your environment. So we developed this highly sensitive signal detection system. And now we live in a world where, for the most part, we're pretty safe. I mean, there are exceptions to this, but, for the most part, we aren't in actual physical mortal danger every day. Even people who live in a dangerous neighborhood, even people who live in an abusive relationship. You know what I'm saying? The fact that that stuff goes on for as long as it does. I mean, not that it's acceptable or anything like that, but basically where we're living here now today is so much safer than where we were back then, that even dangerous places now are far safer than the average place where people were living 10 or 15,000 years ago. I remember actually looking up on, because when we went to Detroit, I was fascinated with Detroit's, for me, it was known for crime and RoboCop and dystopia and all this different stuff. And I kind of had a baptism in fire, right? Because when we drove into Detroit, we took the wrong exit and ended up going off to a place that there's a lot of lovely places in the city, actually, and even in the outskirts of the city too. But there are some places that actually are the way that people, that RoboCop makes, kind of sketchy. It was like square blocks of just blown out, destroyed houses, and people that just almost looked like they just looked like they just weren't even there. I mean, it was very desolate, very depressing, it was bizarre. I mean, the expanse of it was overwhelming to me, having never seen anything like that. But I looked up the most dangerous street in the country. Where's the most dangerous street in the country? And it talked about people who live in this community, and I forgot the name of it, but it's you probably would know the name. And the probability of you being a victim of a violent, or not killed, but a victim of a violent crime was a 1 in 4 chance over the course of your whole life. And I thought, God, that's interesting, that the most dangerous place in the country, you've only got a 25% chance over the course of your whole life. If you got more likely than not, you're actually not going to be. And of course, being kind of a sheltered person relatively coming into this place, I mean, I feel like I step out the street for 2 minutes, I'm probably going to be dead. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But the reality of it was different than that. The reality of it was, you know, and I wouldn't want to live there, but it was interesting that even that extremely dangerous place, relatively speaking, was comparatively safe. Most people aren't experiencing violence on a daily basis. That doesn't always be true for us. That's not always been the case. There have been other people who are really violent, other tribes, other hunter-gatherer groups, all this different stuff, animals that are trying to get us, just in general being exposed to the weather. So our biology, our psychology, our neurology, our tendency to perceive things. I mean, this is an interesting thing. If you see somebody on social media or, I don't know, in your social circle or something like that, and you're kind of suspicious of them, and you're just kind of like, what is that person doing? What are they up to? What, you know, you kind of maybe are inclined to think the worst of them, or to be stressed out about what they're up to, or figuring out how they might be trying to kind of get over on you or something like that. Why are you inclined to do that? Why am I inclined to do that in some cases? Like, just because by default, I'm running software that was developed in a situation where there actually were things that, you know, physical things that posed a danger to me. And I think just kind of remembering the fact that, like, we're operating with that here, but we also now have this capacity to imagine dangers that aren't there, to imagine problems that aren't there, to imagine issues that aren't there, and that our experience, our subjective experience, what it's like to be us, tracks our imagination so closely. It doesn't track reality, it tracks our imagination. And then our body tracks our experience. Then our body tracks how we're feeling. And so that's a really important thing when you understand that sequence, that it's like, okay, if my imagination goes to all the worst things that could happen and all the bad stuff that could happen and all the things that could go wrong and what a jerk he is and how awful she is and how this, that, and the other thing's going on, even if that stuff's not true, even if they're not out to get me, and even if it doesn't matter what they're doing, my experience is not going to be, oh, it doesn't matter. My experience is going to be rational. My experience is going to be consistent with the things that I'm imagining, the worst case scenario. And then my body is going to be responding not to what I know rationally or intellectually. My body is actually going to be responding to the experience that I'm having as a result of the things that I'm imagining, the meanings I'm assigning, the beliefs I'm believing, the patterns of focusing. I'm giving my attention to all the problems, to what's wrong, and so on and so forth. And so I think that, like, understanding that whole thing, understanding the predispositions, getting like, okay, this is why it's so easy to do this stuff. This is why it's so natural to do this stuff. This is why it's so important that I figure out how to make sense out of not doing this stuff because it's not serving me, is really important. And remembering, too, just seeing the whole picture. Like, okay, the body's responding to this feeling, to this experience. Okay, well, damn, but why is it so natural for me to have an experience that really doesn't serve me? Why is it so natural for me to have an experience that's going to make me sick? Well, because here we go. You know, and the interesting thing about living, 10 or 15,000 years ago in this physical environment was you experience these conflicts and there's a very fast resolution because it was very physical. There was a bear there and it was trying to get you. Probably not a bear because they're pretty friendly, or at least they're.
We've had friendly bear experiences.
Well, a mountain lion, right? Something trying to get after you. Is take your baby or whatever, or take your food, and you either prevail in that situation or you don't. There's not like chronic stresses. You know what I'm saying? It's a life in nature is extreme relaxation punctuated by periods of intense activity. It's yin and yang. It's off and on. It's this kind of like, okay, ooh, not okay, or either okay or dead. You know what I'm saying? Like one or the other. Like when something not okay happens, we either make it okay by getting away or winning the fight, or we're killed and eaten or whatever. And there's a lot less stress in that kind of situation. There's one example that is an exception. There is a species of monkey, and I think they live in. I don't know if it's an ape. It's some kind of a like a something or other, and it lives I think in South America. And I heard this on a podcast. If you ever heard there's a guy called Why Zebras, or a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, and it's all about why animals don't really suffer chronic illness, and it's to do with a relative lack of stress. But there's one animal species in the world that approximates a human's level of stress. And the interesting thing about this is why. Well, they live in a place where they don't have any predators, sort of like us. They live in a place where food is really plentiful, sort of like us. They live in a place where they don't have to do anything to survive. They pretty much, they copulate and they eat. I mean, that's all they do. Everything's fine in this place. And so do you know what they do in their spare time? They badger each other. They harass each other. They get
Create drama.
They do. They get, and this is not territorial disputes. We're not talking about disputes over mates, because that's common stuff. That's wolves do that kind of thing. Gorillas do that kind of thing. I think even elephants. I thought it was something where giraffes actually will fight over. That's not what we're talking about. They harass each other simply out of spite. They throw rocks at each other. They just, because they have nothing to do. They have nothing else to do. They have nothing to worry about. They're not at the point where they're like setting goals or anything like that. And so there's this, and so these things are, if you look at them, they're stressed out. They're extremely hairy. They're constantly on edge because this little society is growing up where they basically fuck with each other all the time because they don't have to do anything else, and they're not at the point of really deliberately doing great and wonderful things. And so the level of stress is extremely high because there's a lot of vindictiveness, there's a lot of all those different things. And so what's interesting among these things is that they actually have, guess what we call chronic illnesses. They actually experience things very similar. It's very rare for animals in the wild. Animals in captivity different. Animals in captivity start looking a lot like human beings. They don't exercise, they eat crap, they're stressed out all the time. They don't get, their separation, all the stuff that we experience, they experience when we kind of immerse them in our life. Things in the wild, though, for the most part, it's not true. They're pretty much, they're not low stress, but they're not chronic stress. They're acute stress and resolution, or acute stress and death. Try again next time. But these monkeys, or whatever they are, they live in this constant state of this ambient stress. They're not intensely stressed and then relaxed. They're just kind of a constant low-level simmering, they're right at their emotional threshold all the time, and then they get knocked over, and then they have a conflict, and then the conflict doesn't resolve, they have another conflict or whatever, and they have problems that are a lot like ours. And so I think it's just really interesting to think about that animal aspect of things.
I love the animal aspect of things. It's like I posted the other day, we were at a used bookstore, and I saw this old book called Sharks Don't Get Cancer. And the author was like, oh, sharks don't get cancer, so you've got to eat shark cartilage. and I see it, and from the German New Medicine perspective, okay, what is a shark? A shark is a predator. A shark is going after stuff all the time. A shark doesn't have, I think humans are like the main, predator or threat to sharks are humans, and sharks don't really think about humans, they just do their thing. They're constantly going after what they want. They're not scared, they're not worried. April, don't be so bored that you create drama. Like, a shark's not bored. A shark is like, what's next? What am I going to eat next? What am I going to go after next? Let's go, let's go over here.
It's a goal-seeking mechanism.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the biggest things with this kind of ongoing turmoil and drama that we have, is that we're bored, is that we have structured our time in a way where we don't have to, go and, hike 5 miles so that our family has water. We just have so many luxuries. We just have everything so available to us that we don't have many or any true threats. And so we build our time, we preoccupy our mind with all sorts of other things. And so that having something better to think about, having things to go after, things you want to create, things that you want to move towards, so that you're not bouncing from, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this about myself. We turn these things inward. And then we have all sorts of, self-devaluations and issues about how we feel about ourselves. In the wild also, what do? You don't even know what you look like. We just looked out. We looked out, we saw things we wanted, and we went after it. And we wanted to create something, and so we did it. And so we would go after things. There wouldn't be so much self-reflection. There wouldn't be so much self-doubt or worry. There'd be like, can I do this? Let me see if I can do this. Oh, let me see, can I climb this mountain? Can I go get this piece of fruit? Can I get this water? It was so goal-oriented. It was so going after thriving, creating, getting after what you want, rather than, surviving and being scared constantly. That's kind of like the beautiful, blissful thing about animals, and why you can learn so much just by watching our dog, who's now over here staring at us, is he doesn't worry about stuff, unless he is being, I've told this story before, we did a video about it, about when he got really dry and itchy. I don't know if it was, if we had a food change, I can't remember what the circumstance was at the time, or the weather. I think it maybe was the weather change, and he was super duper itchy, and he was constantly scratching and beating the floor and stuff. And so we were after him all week long to stop doing that, stop doing that, stop doing that. And we are pretty certain that that caused a conflict for him of feeling overwhelmed. But for the most part, unless someone's pestering him or telling him to not do something that's like very supernatural for him to be doing, he doesn't have problems. He doesn't worry about things. Like he focuses on what he wants. He likes his food. He likes to play. He likes to, you know what I mean? And I think learning from that kind of animal perspective and realizing that these conflicts, they are biological conflicts. It's a communication to your biology. It's not, like psychological. It really is. It's what is the biological message that's being transmitted with all of these like fancy words that we're using.
Yeah. I think having time, and that's that thing too. When I'm working with somebody, I have a problem. I'm feeling really jealous of my wife. I'm feeling really jealous regarding my husband. I'm feeling undervalued or underappreciated. I'm feeling I got money problems. My relationship with money is messed up, right? And because this is how I do it with myself. When I'm looking at it, it's okay, there's the problem. And very often the problem is a subset of a pattern. A pattern that that's operating outside of awareness, that I'm not fully conscious of, right? That I'm not fully aware of, and that's why I'm able to do it. Is because there are things that I'm doing that are contributing to the result that I'm getting and not wanting in my life right now. And the reason that it seems like that's not true, that I'm not doing it, that this stuff is just happening, is that part of my contribution to this issue is occurring outside of awareness. Like for me, it completely opened my mind to the notion of 100% responsibility for everything about what it was like to be me, way before I had the capacity to see even 50% of the things that I was doing that was creating outcomes that I didn't want. This idea that, do you know what it feels like when I do something and I do it outside of awareness? It feels like I'm not doing it at all. It feels like someone else is causing it. It feels like things outside of me are causing it. It feels like it's just happening. It feels like something like that. And so when it comes to solving these problems, I very often say, okay, this problem probably isn't just happening. Does everybody have this problem, or is this like a me thing? If it keeps coming up in a relationship, it keeps coming up with money, it keeps coming up with this job, it keeps coming up with my body, there's something I'm doing without realizing it that's getting me to this experience, to these sequences of behavior that are creating these results in my life that are giving rise to this physical manifestation, whatever it is. I just need to find out what it is I'm doing. I don't need to look outside myself. I need to, what am I doing? Not, what am I doing? But, what am I doing? How am I creating this? This is interesting. What's going on here? Isn't it interesting that it's possible for me to think things that don't serve me outside of awareness, or to believe things, or to operate? And this is a big one too, because a lot of times it's not like, I'm not good enough. I feel bad. It's like, if only I could stop that. A lot of the times it's the presuppositions of the things I'm thinking. There's a root of scarcity or of lack or of not okayness. And then I go think positive thoughts from an aware, I'm aware of being not okay. And so I go to the seminars and I think the thoughts and I take the courses in an effort to remedy the thing I'm conscious of being. I'm conscious of being not okay. That's the seed. And this is this thing that everything produces after its kind. And so if I do the right things from an awareness of being a wrong sort of person or a not okay sort of person, those right things are going to produce after its kind. The seed, it can't, it's like an oak tree comes like from I messed this up last time.
Was it an acorn?
An acorn.
We think it's an acorn.
Like an acorn doesn't grow like corn. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't grow, a rose bush. It grows an oak tree reliably. And in the same way, it doesn't always look like an oak tree. The little sprout doesn't look like an oak tree. The seed that's growing doesn't. My efforts to be nice to Melissa, they don't look like I'm setting us up for a fight. But if it came from an awareness of, or a consciousness of being not okay, or of you being some way that you being not okay, or whatever, it will lead in this kind of circuitous route. There'll be this natural bridge of incident that in retrospect I might be able to see, but I will not recognize as I'm traveling the path. How do you get somebody to travel the path to the crazy witch's house, like Hansel and Gretel? It's like, well, you got to make sure they don't know where they're going until it's too late. And that's how these patterns operate too. It's like, well, if I didn't do it intentionally. Well, of course not. But intentionality is not the relevant issue here. The fact is, and the whole point is, it's possible to do things that don't serve us unintentionally. And in fact, it's really the only way to do things that don't serve us is to do them outside of awareness, to do them unconsciously, to do them unintentionally. And so getting back to this thing, I have a problem. I have a relationship problem. I have a self-image problem. I have a money problem. I've got a health problem. It's so easy. The problem is a part of the pattern. What also is a part of the pattern is the manner in which I am inclined to respond to the problem, the manner in which I'm inclined to attempt to fix the problem. It's rigged in many cases. It's set up to result in failure, to result in a confirmation of the self-concept that originated the whole thing. And so that's very interesting to watch too. And so I say, okay, so I've got this problem. I have this insatiable urge to start working on solving this problem. Instead of that, though, what I think I want to do is I want to observe how I am inclined to respond to the fact that this problem exists, because there's a thread running throughout these things, right? And very often, if I set to work trying to solve the problem, I kind of just put my head down and I get busy so that I can feel like I'm being productive, when in fact what I'm doing is perpetuating the process. I'm working up to, oh, nothing works for me. I'm working up to a collapse, or exhaustion of willpower. I'm working up to a negative conclusion about myself, the world, or other people. I'm working up to quitting. I'm working up to saying, see, I tried to do it different and it turned out the same way. Awareness allows me to see that's all my doing. Awareness allows me to see that none of that is just happening. It allows me to see that what I thought was, oh, it was just poor me. I just discovered I had a problem. In relationships, that X happens. I tried to fix it, and I did my best. And it feels so real, but it's pattern very often. It is perpetuative, and you can't just force yourself to do something different. You can't just do the opposite of what you're inclined to do. All you can do is watch what you're inclined to do and say, isn't this interesting? If this were leading to exactly what I've always gotten before, what would that be like? What would that look like? How would it go? Where is it? Where do I take the turn? How do I make sense out of doing that thing that doesn't serve me? How do I feel like I'm going the extra mile to change things when in fact I'm contributing to the perpetuation of something? You know what I'm saying? A great example would be like, let's say my intention is to get along with you, let's say. And I decide that I'm doing it from an awareness of the fact that maybe you're kind of hard to get along with, right? Mm-hmm. And so what I'll do is I'll say, okay, I'm going to be very nice to you today. I'm going to be very nice to Melissa today. And then I don't go beyond that. That's page 1. I'm going to be nice to Melissa today. But I don't skip, 3 pages down the script and see that it says, when I'm nice to her and she doesn't respond the way I want her to, or when I'm nice to her and she kind of has a little bit of an attitude or whatever anyway, or when I'm nice to her and she has a bad day anyway, when I'm nice to her on subject X and she takes issue with something that I did on subject Y, then I explode and then I say, see, this isn't, and if I'm doing that outside of awareness, I have no idea, and it feels very real.
And sometimes, and I know that this is the same for me in the beginning, because a lot of, that awareness really, I'm going to give it away. You don't have to buy any of our courses or anything to know. Awareness is a solution to all of your problems. Awareness is what it comes down to, is becoming aware of how you do your own experience, becoming aware of who you are conscious of being. It all boils down to becoming more aware. And that, when you're new to this, it's kind of a sucky answer. It's kind of like, oh, I am aware. I'm aware that I do this. I want to not do this. And that's how I approached it too in the beginning, was like, well, no, the thing is what you need to do for me is I need for you to like explant this thing that's in me. I've got this, okay, so you say I've got a pattern. I need you to take it out of me.
That's part of the pattern.
And that was the thing, is like I wanted someone to I wanted some method. That's why people love methods, and they love processes, and they love some kind of thing. If I tap here and I say this affirmation and I do this X number of times, that person told me that if I did that, then this thing would be gone. This problem that I have, it would go away. And listen, I wanted that too. I would like maybe I need to do hypnosis. Maybe you just need to hypnotize me, and you need to like tell me how I'm going to be now.
Whose fault is it then if you do the same thing?
Yeah, but that's the thing, is like, I mean, I had that inclination and tendency too in the beginning. Is like, well, the thing is yeah, that sounds great. Your solutions sound like they might work for some people, but the thing is with me, I need some kind of thing, and that's why people like pills, and that's why people like machines, and that's why people like all sorts of like doohickeys to like do the thing to like take this out of me. But the only thing that's ever worked for me is watching and observing and seeing how I go about doing the things that I'm doing that's creating the results that I don't want, because the only way I can continue doing it is when I do it without awareness, when I go unconscious, when I slip back into a pattern and I'm not watching who I'm conscious of being. Was I conscious of being like the awesome person that I want to be? Oh, but then I had this thought and that led to this thought and that led to this thought, and now all of a sudden I'm feeling small again. I'm feeling like stuff doesn't work out for me, and I'm feeling like maybe I need to do more work, or maybe I need to make more effort, or maybe I really screwed this up. And then I start thinking, and then I'm on this downward spiral of thought. The thing that I need to become aware of is the transition zone that goes from like, this is a great day and I'm awesome and I've got so much going for me and I've got all this gratitude and all this awesome stuff that you can get yourself to that place. I know that most people watching this video, you can get there in your journaling, in your prayer time, after you work with your coach or your therapist, whatever. You're feeling awesome. But at some point, you go from that zone to a different zone. But you black out in between and you're not watching. And that's the thing, is it's watching. It's awareness. And that's that capacity that we have with these big old brains that we have, that we can watch what we're doing. And how do we go back to these patterns and these things that don't serve us? Why do we go back to the drama? It's like, oh gosh, have you ever done that? I mean, it's a bad behavior cycle. It's like, why am I doing this thing again? Why am I doing the same exact thing that I swore that I'd never do? That I was like, come to Jesus moment. I'm never going to do this again, partner, self. I'm never going to do this terrible thing again. I don't ever want to do this. But somehow...
It's personal growth baptism, right?
Yeah, it's like, I've had a lot of those moments, but what is it? Why do I find myself here again? It's because I'm not watching. Because if I was watching myself do it the whole entire time, I wouldn't be able to do something that didn't serve me. I really wouldn't be able to. And so that's where it's like getting committed to your experience and seeing how you do your experience, which is, it's work to observe yourself. It's easier to go unconscious and have Dr. So-and-so do it, or like do this whatever method that somebody said would work. It's more difficult, and it takes more to learn how you do your own personal creation of your experience. But I have found that it's been the only thing that has shifted anything for me, and it's been the only thing that's made the changes long lasting, and made me the source of all my information. So like, I know how to fix it. Instead of taking my car to the mechanic, I know how to fix it myself. And there's nothing more satisfying than seeing it and knowing how to fix it and fixing it yourself, because then it's like, that's ultimate personal empowerment. Otherwise, someone else has to do it. You've got to, have a session. You got to go to someone else to do it. That's why we, in all of the work that we do, is we give you the tools. It's like Ever Better Life course. Here's some tools. The Resolve community and all of the programs that we have in there. Here are some tools. And then you have to learn how to use them, and then you have to use them, and they work amazingly well.
And the thing about it too is that it's so when people do get fed up with the whole awareness thing, and they say, and it comes from a couple different places. One is, a lot of people have a pattern where they've basically decided that nothing works for them. And so it's a matter of time finding out why this particular thing they're trying doesn't work. So they go through a cycle where it's like, okay, maybe this is the thing. Well, no, usually we find the cycle that starts with, oh, I'm jaded, I've tried everything, nothing works for me. And then you have a conversation with that person, and kind of the real person peeks out, and they listen to what you say enough to get excited. And they say, okay, maybe this is the thing. Maybe this is the thing. And they're in that state of consciousness. And when they're in that state of consciousness, maybe this is the thing. It is the thing. And then they start doing it for a minute. And then they have maybe an upper limit issue. So they start doing something. Dan John, this strength and conditioning coach who is kind of a genius with life stuff from exercise stuff, says that he has this quote of like the classic client breakdown, which is, I tried it and it worked so well I got bored and decided to try something else. And that is an upper limit issue. I tried it, I started feeling good, and this is not a conscious thing, by the way. We have to look at the phenomenological kind of we have to look at what actually happened and then trace back to say, okay, what the F was that? Why did this happen? Why did things go well and then there was self-sabotage? Why were you running smoothly and then you pulled the emergency brake? Because functionally, would you agree that's what happened? Yeah. Okay, well then we have to explain how it's possible for that to have happened, because you're not stupid and you're not broken and you don't want to not have what you want, so there's got to be some other explanation going on. It's an upper limit thing. It's a criteria thing. It's a when something's working well, I let up rather than lean in. I get a little euphoria, and I say, okay, this is enough. This is good enough. This is, and then that euphoria kind of wears off, and then you find yourself zero momentum. And it's one of those things where it's kind of hard to get going again. The one thing that's really interesting is, okay, so there's this awareness thing, and the reason that we love the awareness thing so much is that we're saying it's your doing, it's all you're doing, and it's just, there's nothing wrong with you, you're just doing some things that don't serve you. There's nothing wrong with us, we're capable of doing things that don't serve us. If I want someone to come along and do a procedure to me, whether it's a, psychiatric procedure or some kind of like, you mentioned the tapping. Well, I don't know about that, but
Just kidding.
Whatever. If maybe I want a breast augmentation,
funny.
I don't know. I want something done to me, some hypnosis. I want some therapy where it's like you get inside my mind and crank some things around.
Yeah.
Why do I want that? Why do I believe? Why do I think that's my solution? It's because I bought into the basic idea that there's something wrong with me. I bought in. Do you want to let him out? Maybe he seems like he needs to go outside.
Okay.
I bought into the basic idea that there's something wrong with me and I need an expert to fix me. Versus our approach, which is an awareness-based approach, which is really like literally we're going to get you doing things. Not doing one thing. Don't go into the hyperbaric chamber and then come out and just run on autopilot. Like actually modify the doings. Because it's a strange thing that the stuff that creates our life, they're the little choices that we make about what to think and feel and perceive and the meanings to assign and the things to believe and what to be conscious of being from one moment to the next. When I'm making my breakfast, when I'm driving my car, when I'm walking down the street, when I'm doing this video, when I get done doing, it's those little thoughts that are creating what I'm getting, and it's changing those little thoughts that are going to get me something different, something more consistent with what I want. And yet there's this inclination within me where I want to go see somebody and have that person crank some widgets in my head and have that change everything. But really, life is made out of these little tiny decisions. You know what I'm saying? And it's recognizing that there's nothing wrong with you. It's that there are certain things maybe that you're doing that may not be serving you. That's where all of the results that you're getting in life that you don't want, that's where they're coming from. It's not that there's anything wrong with you that needs to be fixed. It's that you, like everyone else, has the capacity when you're doing things outside of awareness to sometimes do things in ways that produce results that are other than what you would most like to be producing, to produce what you don't want or to fail to produce what you do. And the solution to that really is increased awareness, because awareness corrects your doing. Awareness calibrates your doing. Awareness addresses those unresourceful things, because you can't do things that don't serve you and do them with awareness. That means if I'm telling myself a story about what it means that you did or did not do what you did or did not do, and that story is not serving me, that story is serving to create or to perpetuate things I don't want. If I become aware of the fact that I'm telling myself that story, I see myself telling that story as I'm telling that story, and I see the consequences experientially. I see what I then feel like doing or not doing. As those consequences are occurring, I won't be able to continue to tell myself that story. I can't bullshit myself when I know I'm bullshitting myself, is kind of one way of saying that. I can't do that. I can't deceive myself when I know I'm deceiving myself, because deception requires deception. Deception requires a lack of clarity. It requires there to be something that I don't know about. I mean, self-deception, you see, is only possible with a lack of awareness. If the self-deception is occurring if here's awareness and self-deception is occurring over here, well, then I'm not aware of it. You know what I'm saying? I'm aware of the consequences, maybe, but I'm not aware of the deception itself. If I bring self-deception into my awareness, it is no longer self-deception. It can't be, because I'm not deceived any longer. Do you know what I'm saying? It's something different. It kind of dries up and flakes away. It falls away. It's like dead skin. It's like a snake shedding its skin. It's a really supernatural thing. It's funny, the whole idea of like wanting something done to us, the problem with that, and the problem with procedures, and this is why like the Every Better Life course is a very interactive thing. This is why the stuff in Resolve, which is based largely on stuff from the Every Better Life course, it's very proactive, because if I just do something to you, you've got all these patterns. They are ensconced, they are fortified, they are well-oiled machines that are operating in your life. These patterns know how to survive. They know how to take in input and dissipate it, which means if I believe that I'm I don't know, unattractive, and someone tells me I'm good looking, the pattern of the belief that I'm not good enough, I'm unattractive, there's something wrong with me, can absorb the impact of that compliment and can spin it, can distort it, can discount it, to minimize it, can forget it, can just delete it altogether. I can do all sorts of things to, distribute that impact. It's almost like airbags or like shocks on a car or something like that. Like it's designed to absorb input from the outside in a way that allows the basic structure, the car or the pattern, to remain unperturbed, to continue along in the same way. And so if I do something to you or give you a procedure or a process or whatever, and you have a pattern or you're convinced, that self-concept, that you're not good enough, that, have you ever seen like on a microscope, like there's something called a phagocyte? It's like this, like the big circle, and it basically, its job is to absorb other stuff, other microscopic stuff, and kind of eat it up when it's done. It's like a little trash compactor or something. Patterns operate that way. It's like the pattern is the big phagocyte, and the positive information, the personal growth course, the new system that you learn about or whatever, if it doesn't address awareness, if it doesn't address the pattern just absorbs it and metabolizes it and spits it out. It just gets rid of it. It just says, okay, where are we going? Where we're going to, I'm not good enough. Okay, well, given the fact that she's taking this beliefs course, given the fact that she's learning this material, how can we get her to the place of not good enough? It's a preordained kind of thing. And it just takes whatever happens between the starting assumption and the end result. Starting assumption being I'm not good enough, the end result being shit, I'm right, I'm not good enough, I knew it. And it takes whatever happens in between and makes sure it leads to that particular outcome.
I knew I said the breast augmentation thing for a reason, because that actually reminds me of the book Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. And he, in his whole book, which was like, it was so groundbreaking at the time, he was a plastic surgeon. And what he'd find was like, some of these people would come in and they'd have their plastic surgery and it would do exactly what they wanted it to do. Like, I need my nose to be smaller and my boobs to be bigger, and then I'm going to really love myself and I'm going to be the person I want to be. And that happened some of the time. But some of the time it didn't happen. Some of the time the person got the perfect surgery and now their outside reflected what they wanted, but the inside, the person on the inside was still the person they were before. The pattern remained even after the external had been molded to what they thought they needed to feel better about themselves. And so he, after watching this happen again and again and again, he got really interested in the mind, and that's like, us, we were interested in the physical body and the spine and, the nervous system and what are we doing with our posture and all of that. And you see after a while, it's like, you get to the mind and that you see that everything flows from the person's concept of being, their patterns of thinking, their patterns of relating to themselves, the world, and other people, the way that they perceive everything about their experience. And then you learn GNM on top of that. You say, it's their perception, it's who they're being that predisposes them to certain conflicts, to these conflicts persisting. And we've got to work in here. We've got to do this inner work. We've got to become aware of, how do I keep doing self-devaluation? How do I keep doing, this territorial conflict? How do I keep, feeling, getting this indigestible morsel conflict that I can't process? Like, how am I resisting so much in my world that I'm continuing to create the same predictable types of results, even after I know, even after I'm aware? Like, that's the thing, the difference between awareness and knowing. Awareness, our definition of awareness is actually seeing yourself doing something as you're doing it, thinking the thoughts as you're thinking them, and having like the spotlight on it. When you see yourself going through a series of thoughts that leads you to like, I know if I keep thinking about this, I'm going to end up in that depressed state, feeling like crap about myself. I know that, and I see that, and I'm here, like before I push down that first domino of 1,000 domino thoughts that's going to lead me to a predictable outcome of feeling like crap and wishing, whatever. That's what awareness is. It's different than knowing that you do something. It's actually seeing actively yourself engage in something that either currently or eventually is going to lead to kind of self-destructive emotions, thoughts, feelings, behaviors that you don't want. And And yeah, so it all has to do with what's going on inside behind your eyes. And that's what we are so fascinated with, because that's where all the change can take place. All of the external changes you're wanting, the physical changes you're wanting, the changes in your health, the changes in your finances, in your relationships, all of that stuff has to flow from what's going on inside. And most of us, we wait around for the outside stuff to get themselves in order, get this, spouse, get yourself in order, get all this stuff out here, and then I'll feel better. And when you really realize that this has to change first, I've got to change before my skin can clear up. I was just talking to a guy yesterday who, he's struggling with the skin stuff, and he's got really bad acne, and he's like, I'd really like to be out meeting girls and stuff, but I just can't, get over this face full of acne. And it's like, you've got to realize that the face full of acne is old news. It's based on old thinking. This is based on feeling attacked or feeling soiled that happened before. You are on the leading edge right now. What you're thinking right now about your skin, the state of the way that you look right now, is going to determine how you look in a week. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, you've got to, on faith, on confidence in your body, on knowing these natural laws and processes, that what I think now, okay, my skin, if I look at it right now, it looks terrible, and I hate it, and I really wish it didn't look this way, and I feel soiled, and I feel it horrible. But I'm going to consciously shift what I'm thinking about, and I'm going to tell myself, this is old news. My skin is clear. I look the way I want to look, and you focus on being confident in all of the things that you want, and you shift what you're thinking about regarding your skin. That's what's going to allow the skin to clear. You've got to go there first. You've got to kind of push yourself out ahead of physical reality, and know and trust and have confidence that physical reality will catch up. We're just so physically focused. We get so distracted. If it doesn't happen instantly, we don't have magic, then and the skin just magically clears up, we say, oh, this isn't working. And a lot of times we're planting the seed and expecting the harvest like that, but we live in this world where there's a period of time that things take to cycle out. And so understanding that's why you can just look to the laws of nature, and they will guide you so clearly to what you should do. If you look at the way the sun rises and sets, look at the way, water follows the path of least resistance, all of these things, they just teach you about ways that you can think that will help you access this a deeper part of yourself, this biological, the answers are within you. You know how to get there. We just have so much in the way.
It's interesting about the acne thing, because I had a lot of acne in high school and even into college off and on, which is really interesting, the pattern that it kind of took. When you have it, it's the only thing that exists for you. I suspect too that when you're overweight, or when you feel like you're overweight, when you don't like your body, because there's a period of time when I was late elementary school where I sort of became aware of being kind of a chunky, you know what I'm saying? I wasn't athletic the way I wanted to be, and it became my sole fixation. And truly, really, and now this is, if you can get bold with this, if you got something going on physically about the way you look or whatever, and you're insecure about it, that is a wonderful opportunity to learn to decide for yourself, to basically become unconditional, not in feeling good, but in being conscious of being who you really want to be. 90% of the time, people are not responding to the acne or whatever it is. They're responding to your consciousness as a result of being fixated on the acne. You see, that, and then what happens though is that I assume that they were responding to, oh God, the terrible breakout. No, they're responding to all the things that I'm doing outside of awareness as a result of being conscious of being so unattractive, which is what I was really conscious of being when I had that going on. That's really what people were responding to. Now, 10% of people may actually be responding to the physical condition. That's because they're insensitive. And I don't mean that they're not kind. I mean that they're dumb, in a sense, that they're not responding to your experience. They're one of the few people that are kind of dull enough just to respond to that basic physical reality. Have you ever come into contact with someone who maybe didn't look traditionally beautiful or something like that, or they were but they weren't put together, in a traditional, but they look great? That was you responding to their experience. If you've ever come into contact with somebody before and you didn't know why, but they were attractive, you didn't know why, but you liked the way they looked, they were breaking all of the rules perfectly. You know what I'm saying? That's what it's like to be responding to their experience. That's what it's like to be responding to their concept of self. They were conscious of being something, maybe automatically, right? Doesn't mean that they did this on purpose. And that was you responding to that. People can't help but do that. And so it's a very bold thing to not say, gosh, I'm broken out here and my face doesn't look the way I want it to, but I feel obligated to feel good. I feel like I have to feel good, because if I feel good, the law of attraction fairy or the biological fairy or some kind of Santa Claus is going to sprinkle me down some clear skin. Don't you see that that's the pattern absorbing the information? That's me saying, what do I have to do? I have to do this, but I can't do this thing, and so I'm not good enough, and that's why I can't get what I want. It's not about feeling good. It's about becoming conscious of being who you want to be. And it's about feeling the way you want to feel. The reason that you want the clear skin or the body that's different than the way that it is now or whatever, the reason you want those things is because there's a certain experience that comes with that. And it's a swagger. It's not a gratitude. It's not an appreciation necessarily. I mean, maybe it is. But more often than not, it's a confidence. It's a comfort in your own skin. It's an owning of your space inside and out. That's the thing to go for. Not, I'm trying to be in a cheerful mood so I can, but I don't like the way I look, damn it. But, this book says I'm supposed to be cheerful. What do I have? It's not that. It's a ceasing to delay the appropriation of the consciousness of being the thing that you want to be. It's going for that first. Not just going for it first, but going for it in a way that demonstrates a certain level of indifference to what's going on outside. That indifference in and of itself is an attractive thing to people. It's an attractive thing to everything in the universe, that indifference. If I am conditional in my consciousness of being what I want to be, I am weak, I am meek, and people smell it from miles away. It doesn't matter how much money I have and how well I'm dressed and how physically good looking I am based on the chart. If my consciousness, everybody, there are people who are beautiful and wealthy and they have everything and everyone likes them and everyone's, but something's missing, something not there. It's very tenuous, it's very compromised, and it's because they're fully predicated on, their consciousness is fully dependent upon the things that are outside. And so I say that if things are not the way you want them to be with your physical body and your physical world outside, that's a really wonderful thing, because it's giving you the chance to really assert ownership of kind of like the inner territory first, so that when you acquire these things and you kind of manifest these things and you kind of arrange reality in a way that's pleasing to you, you can really enjoy it because it will occupy a rightful place. You won't be kind of worshiping it as a false idol. And all that means, by the way, is attributing your well-being to things that exist outside yourself. It doesn't mean liking it too much. You can like it, love it as much as you want, as long as you know you own it and it doesn't own you. That it's the state of consciousness that is creative. And that's such a bold thing. But when you can, without question, when I get people to Mick Jagger, I like Rolling Stones a lot. Mick Jagger is a perfect example of somebody. He's not particularly talented. He's not particularly good looking. He's not particularly anything except conscious of being everything he wants to be. And therefore he is. And he's 75 years old, and he's dating a girl that's 22, a ballet person. Literally, he's put out all these different albums. He does all and people say he's ridiculous, he's crazy, he's outrageous. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Mick Jagger, he clearly, fully appropriates exactly what he wants to be experiencing. And so he does. And doing your version of that, what does that look like? What does it look like to stop kind of delaying this awareness? And this is the thing that we do instead of bitching about what's going wrong in our life. This is the thing that we do instead of having an opinion about what so-and-so's doing with their life. This is the thing that we do instead of watching Fox News or CNN. This is the thing that we do instead of having opinions about things that we don't even know why we have opinions about. Having opinions about things, that griping about things, talking about the weather. What do you do instead of that? You really become conscious and deliberate constantly in absolutely just wallowing in a consciousness of being exactly what you want to be. This is not, let me wake up and say my personal growth prayers. That's bullshit. That's who the fuck wants to do that? This is about waking up and saying, God, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want? That's what the shark says. He doesn't even articulate it. He just is seal, where's the seal? Do you know what I'm saying? And he has no problems. He has no problems. He just has a goal. And it's the seal, or it's the whale, or it's the whatever the shark's going to eat today. And make life that way for you. Make the world that way for you. I don't know what I'm going to eat today, but I know I'm going to eat something today. And if you show up on the menu, it's just kind of listen, it's nothing personal. That is a wonderful way to approach life. It's just this constant appropriation of that state. And by the way, you're not taking it from anybody else, because your state that you really want to be in, you're being conscious of being what you want to be, nobody else wants that. You know what I'm saying? And you're not stealing it from anybody else. It's just out there in this ocean, and it's about whether or not we go get it or not. And I think that like shifting from that really is that kind of surviving to thriving kind of thing. It's that it's the difference in, surviving is, let me solve my problem. Oh, I've got this problem here, let me solve it. Oh God, this is a tough one, and it's one thing after another, and blah 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 blah. And I know what it's like to be there. And it's terrible. And the point isn't that it annoys me when you're there. The point is that you deserve to be somewhere other than that, somewhere better than that. And that the place is so accessible to you. So surviving is solving the problem. Thriving is recognizing the pattern of creating a problem, and of seeing the problem, and of reacting to the problem, and of interacting with the problem in a way that tends to perpetuate the problem, and in a way that sets you up, even if you do solve the problem, that you have other problems that come up, you have other experiences that you don't want. It's just one thing after the other. That's what thriving really is about. It's about transcending the whole thing. It's about like in like the gold rush and everything, everyone was coming out here trying to do find gold. But the people who really got rich for the most part were the people who, what's the problem? There's gold out here and we can't find it. People stopped trying to solve that problem. They transcended it, and they said, everybody else is trying to solve that problem. Let's sell them shovels and axes and gold panning equipment, and let's give them lodging. And I think it was Donald Trump's grandfather or something like that. That's how they originally got rich in real estate and stuff, was that he went up to Washington or something like that, looking to look for gold, and he said pretty much, forget this. There's all these other people up here. I'm going to build a bar or a tavern and a hotel, and I'm going to cater to those people. That's an example of kind of like transcending that problem. Instead of don't believe your problem anymore, because in trying to solve it, really often we're just channeling our creative energy into it. Observe. So like it's funny, if there's me and here's my problem, and I'm just channeling all this energy into solving it. I'm saying, God, if I could just get this acne clear up, man, if I could just get this cancer to go away, man, if I could just figure out how to get out of this financial situation, this debt, whatever. Makes perfect sense. It's natural, it's normal, but so much of what creates suffering in our life are things that are perfectly justified, perfectly natural, and perfectly normal. So if we want to get rid of suffering, very often one of the ways to do that is to stop doing things that are easy, effortless, natural, and normal, and justifiable. That's a tremendously powerful skill, and it's a skill that very few people ever develop. The ability to say, I'm totally justified in doing this. It makes perfect sense that I would do this. 100 out of 100 people would do this too and would say, you're totally right to do this. But it doesn't serve me. I don't think this is going to, I think that I need something better than this. I'm going to leave it. It's saying no to that is the ultimate skill. It's the ultimate power. It is transcendent power. So instead of being in this situation where all I see is my problem, I'm going to develop awareness. And what awareness is that instead of looking from here, I kind of go out and I look from here, and I can see then the problem, and I can see myself, and I can see my patterns, my formerly unseen patterns of interacting with the problem. And I can see, it's interesting, if I'm looking from here, I'm trying to solve this problem. But if I look from here, from the place of awareness, off to the side, this kind of broader vision, what looked like solving the problem from my limited perspective is so obviously and clearly a pattern of perpetuating that problem. Oh, that's it. It's cheating. It's insider trading with life, with creating the life that you want. You know what I'm saying? You're working with information that most people don't have. That's why it works so well. I mean, when you know how the stuff is going, when you have access to this information and you know what to do with it, you can really start controlling this whole process.
Something about what you said just kind of sparked in me thinking about Grant Cardone, who's like just really crazy awesome entrepreneur, and he's got all of his stuff is 10x, you've got these goals, you want to get rid of this problem, 10x, what would it look like for this thing to just be blown out of the water? He's got another phrase that's so awesome, is be obsessed or be average. Be obsessed, I think he even says be the shark. I think that's another thing that he says, but just kind of getting obsessed and passionate. And I made a post the other day, it takes gumption. It takes grit and balls and kind of to really truly get what you deserve in life. To really truly create what you want to create, there's kind of this hungry lion shark passion of you know what, I'm not going to settle for it. I don't want to just solve my problems. I want $10 million, and I want a smoking hot body, and I want an amazing relationship, and I want, you know what I mean? It's go bigger.
Is there any part of you that's incredulous?
Go bigger.
Watch that part, right? Part of the pattern. Is there part of you that's like, well, I don't know about that. I
don't need $10 million. Maybe
fuck
just,
that. You gotta that is part of the problem, right? And it's in all of us. I think it is to some degree or another, right?
Mm-hmm.
That part is there. And I think the thing too about the be obsessed or be average that's so powerful is it's not be obsessed or be average in terms of income of people. It's not about that. It's be the average of what you could be.
Mm-hmm.
That's the worst average to be. As well, if there's a scale of all the things that you could have been or all the quality of experience that you could have had, of like what it's like to be you, the worst possible experience of existing, the best possible experience of existing, well, now kind of right there in the average. What a waste. That's the worst kind of average to be. It's the worst kind of experiential C student to be. And once you recognize that, and it's like, man, I'm constantly sort of like, there are other, it's like, it reminds me of in Family Guy. Remember like when Stewie, it was like a funny scene where like Stewie was like about to be conceived and he was like in a spaceship and it was like with this like twin or whatever and they were fighting against each other. I feel like there were all these different versions of myself kind of vying for expression. There were all these different, I'm literally a different person if I'm operating from a different state of consciousness. And one thing I found is that whatever version I am in a given moment in time, whatever kind of state I am expressing at a given moment in time, does not want to relinquish the spotlight, does not want to get off the stage, and so if I'm at like a 2 out of 10, 2 out of 10 doesn't want to get kicked off the stage, you know what I'm saying? It would rather be 2 out of 10 in the spotlight than behind, the curtain, and 10 out of 10 has to really want it bad enough to take that place, and I think that's a really powerful thing. And so when you come up against resistance internally to doing changes, the real work, very often people will change non-essential patterns. They'll do things that aren't the thing. That as long as it won't really transform them, they're willing to do it. But there's this resistance to, and they start kind of getting hostile towards you sometimes. They start kind of taking exception to things that you're saying. They start finding fault with you. They start seeing if they can get you out of their experience before you force a transformational kind of change on them. Watch for that stuff. And this is why awareness is so powerful, because you can see it yourself. What's going on here? Why am I resistant to this? Why all of a sudden don't I want to listen to this guy? If you've just done, there's plenty of people that I don't listen to, but if you've been listening to somebody, it's like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Oh, that's really great. Oh, that, but then all of a sudden, no, I'm just not feeling that anymore. The spiritual growth community, there's a lot of like, I got to follow my truth. I'm just not feeling that. That's the pattern speaking. 99 times out of 50 times, it's the pattern speaking. 99 out of 50, right? It is the pattern speaking. It's bullshit. That I know it seems legitimate and it seems real. That's the self-preserving pattern. That's, boy, we were coming up against a threshold of complete reorganization. We better let up. How can we rationalize that? I told you the pattern absorbs whatever it is that is introduced into it. And if I introduce into it, be true to yourself, follow your truth, do what's right for you, blah, 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 all good enough things in and of themselves, the pattern says, oh, we can use that. Because if we ever feel like we're in danger, we're just going to say, that person's trying to change you. That person's trying to make you be other than you are. That person's trying, it'll sometimes sound like your mom or your dad, or be yourself or whatever. And it's like, if I'm riding a bicycle and every time I get on the bicycle, I lean so hard to the left that I fall over. And then a nice bicycle instructor comes along, someone who maybe used to do that and they're not doing it anymore. And they're like, okay, listen, one thing I've noticed is that you get a lot less scraped knees and do a lot less damage, and you can get a lot further if you don't lean so hard to the left. And I say, you're trying to change me. You're asking me to be untrue to myself. You think you know better than I do. How dare you? You don't know what's right for me in terms of riding this bicycle. And it's like, well, okay, maybe there is someone in the world who wants to fall off their bicycle every 5 feet. It seems unlikely, but maybe there is that person. But if you'll grant that you want to ride the bicycle gracefully and easily and enjoyably, and if you'll grant that you don't want to fall over, at that point you can retain your autonomy and your independence, and you can retain exactly who you are and allow yourself to relinquish things that aren't working, that aren't you anyway. These patterns are sort of like parasites. They want you to think that they are you so that you'll be afraid to get rid of them. And so they latch on to you. It's like these little things that latch on to sharks, actually. And the best way not to get eaten by a shark is to be latched on to sort of the back of the shark. You know what I'm saying? The best way is a pattern to not, an unresourceful pattern. You want to operate out of awareness. And you want the person to think that you're an essential part of who they really are. And that's one of the things that I found in people, like if it's really kind of hard to get through a brain, is that they are identified with some pattern of behavior or of thinking or of believing that's not serving them. You know what I'm saying? I'm a very emotional person. Sometimes it's code for I spend a lot of time thinking about things that I don't want, thinking in ways that don't serve me, and feeling feelings that I don't want to feel. And I spend a lot of time emphasizing those things and exacerbating those things and behaving those things into reality, and then resisting the consequences of having done that. And then I lament that whole thing, and then I do, and it's like, okay, listen, that's not you. That's a certain pattern of behaving. There's a certain pattern of behaving. That's not inherent to who you are. You're doing that. It's not you. I'm not doing it. It's not me. I could start doing it. I'm not going to, because I happen to kind of be aware of that particular pattern. But recognizing that is huge. Like, you don't want to identify with your bullshit. You don't want to identify with the things that don't serve you. You don't want to derive your significance from things that are creating experiences or results in your life that you don't want. Not that I don't want for you, or that I don't think you should create, but that you don't want.
And creating that space and being able to see that as like, oh, that's not me. Like, this thing I thought was me, that's not me. And you start seeing it as a symptom of an upper limit being like, okay, I want all these great big things, but when I get up to having them, when I get to that point where I'm just like, yeah, like everything's like going, and you kind of hit this wall where you start making excuses, or, start getting emotional, you start criticizing other people, you start, doing things that don't serve you. If you can like be aware in those moments and see, what am I doing right now? And see that as, oh, you know what? I think I'm about to like break through this level of existence and get to this like this place that I want to go. And the thing about like patterns and upper limits is like they're self-preserving in nature. They are what was installed in you very early on from your parents. And it's basically like, listen, if you do things just about in this way, you're gonna live, you're gonna survive, you're gonna make it. But they prevent you from thriving, because thriving in many senses like is kind of scary, because you don't know what's out there, because your parents didn't experience. Maybe it's like a financial cap, like you can only have so much money before you kind of like self-sabotage and have financial disasters, or you can only have so much happiness in your relationship before you self-sabotage and start having all of these terrible things in your relationship, or in your health. Things can go fine, and then you self-sabotage, you start having all these health problems. It's like based on your early life experiences, you kind of got your mix of how much goodness is safe for you to experience. And so you kind of keep that mix of good and bad around. And a lot of people, it's a lot more bad than good. It's just enough good to kind of barely get by with like a decent-ish life experience. But there you are saying, oh, I want more. I see these people and they've got so much more. I know they're no different than me. I know that I can create that for myself. And so when you're in that space, you've got to start watching yourself come up against these upper limits, come up against these patterns, and see, that's not me. Like, this is like a phony game, and like watching it. I watch these patterns in myself sometimes, and I'm like, oh my God, that's my mother. Oh my God, that's, this is stuff that goes on in my family. Oh, I've seen my brothers do this. Oh, I've seen this. And starting to see that that's not me. That's a symptom that there's a part of me that's scared of like what's on the other side of this. But the conscious me knows it's more thriving, it's more money, it's more abundance, it's more health, it's more fitness. It's like, it's all the stuff that I want. But why would I keep myself from that safe survival mode? I want to at least make it. And so that's how we settle into these averages, and we don't kind of go to that next level of whatever we're wanting to create in our lives, health-wise or whatever, because there's a sense in which being sick is safe. Being unwell is a safety zone that a lot of people have. They're used to it. They don't know what they would do with themselves if they were healthy and feeling good all the time and didn't have that sort of drama in their life.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's being limited in some way, I think, for a lot of people. For a lot of people, it's physical. For a lot of people, it's financial.
If it weren't for you,
a lot of people are so stressed out. You know what I'm saying? And it's a lot of people, it's like, hurry, let me have a whole bunch of kids so that I can then say, well, if I didn't have these kids, if I did, and a lot of times, not even I don't love them, but like, oh gosh, but I got to take care of the kids first. You know what I'm saying? And it's so obviously a shortcut to kind of abdicating in some, a huge part of, and it's legitimately, it's a hugely busy kind of thing, but you can just tell not everyone, but certain people you can tell the kind of secondary gains they're deriving from things, and you can tell largely by the number of times they mention it, sort of completely out of the blue. And I think one of the things about these patterns, and if you kind of have a sense about where this stuff maybe is operating in your life, everyone kind of has their version of this stuff. The reason we know so much about it is because we have so much of it. We spend so much time trying to unravel it. One of the most important things you can do, this is huge, this is more important than knowing anything, is you're allowed to become wise to a scam before you understand all the intricacies of exactly what that scam is. If you find yourself about to say something to your significant other, or saying something to yourself, or about to do something or not do something, or you find yourself on the cusp, right, of it feels like you're about to, we're going to make a decision, we're going to go this way or that way, and you can just tell that there's something weird, there's something not right here, there's something amiss. I don't know, I want to do this, but there's another part of me that's like, wait a minute, why now, why here, how do I know to want to do this thing here and now, what the F is going on here? You're allowed to just not do it. And you don't have to know why it's bullshit to know it's bullshit. This is one of the things that kids are extremely aware, and they're extremely intuitive. Parents systematically extirpate this capacity from children, oftentimes unconsciously. I remember my dad would be messing with me and telling me a story that wasn't true, or telling me about the way things worked, or conning me in some sense for fun. And I remember knowing it. And I remember being kind of hesitant and holding back. And I remember him sort of prodding me about it and saying, well, what do you think's going on here? And I remember being in this uncomfortable position where I was like, I don't know exactly what it is that's not right, but I know something's not right. I don't know exactly how you're misrepresenting the situation, but I know something. And there was this little ritual that we went through where I was gradually brought out of that connection to my intuitive awareness of what was going on, that my broader self could recognize bullshit. You know what I'm saying? My broader self could recognize a con. I think that over time, though, we're conditioned to, are you accusing me of doing that? But do you have proof of doing it? I don't want to accuse anyone of doing it. We get to that point where we won't listen to our intuition unless our rational mind is caught up. And by the time our rational mind is caught up, it's too late. Our intuition is sharper, it's faster, it's quicker. That's the whole point. And if we handcuff it so that it's only as fast as the slowest member on the team, which is the intellectual rational mind in many cases, then its purpose is completely, brushed aside. And the interesting thing then is that the rational mind takes credit for a lot of stuff that our intuition got right already and would have gotten right 15 years ago if we would have listened to it. And so have permission, give yourself permission to recognize within yourself crap, stuff, patterns that aren't serving you. You don't need to know exactly what's going on. You just need to say, you know what? I don't think I want to drink this Kool-Aid. You know what? I don't think I want to go out tonight. You know what I'm saying? I don't think I want to follow this guy home. I don't think I like so-and-so. The patterns, they work in the same way. You get that same kind of skeeved out feeling about it. Listen to that and notice it. I mean, this awareness thing is tremendously powerful. Give yourself permission to know things without knowing how you know it. Give yourself permission to know things about yourself, especially, and your own patterns, to become skeptical of stories that you're telling yourself, of like the ability to be certain enough to be uncertain, right? To observe certain things and say, gosh, I'm really convinced about this. But especially if you've gone through the Evergreen Life course, you know how convincers work. You know how to, it's possible for a person to be convinced and to be wrong. And who knows better how to convince you than you? And if there's a pattern kind of running in there, that pattern's got access to the pattern knows how to convince you. The pattern knows exactly what kind of evidence to give you, what intervals to give you the evidence, exactly what form to present the evidence in, exactly how strong to make that. The pattern knows exactly what you need to see in order to keep believing what you need to keep believing in order to keep making the pattern manifest in your reality. It's kind of like, if I pour water into a glass, the water just takes the shape of the vessel. Just the way it works. And that's kind of what happens when our consciousness is contained within these patterns, or when we go into a state of consciousness. You can think of it almost like a room, in a sense, of I'm not okay, I'm not good enough, I'm always doing something wrong. Your consciousness conforms to the dimensions of this state that you're in. That's why it looks like you're not good enough. That's why it feels like you're not good enough. That's why the world treats you like you're not good enough. That's why everybody seems to confirm to you that you're not good enough. That's why you took the test and failed. That's why you went on the date and it didn't work out. That's why your husband or wife cheated on you. That's why that's why every piece of evidence that you could possibly point to a name as definitive proof that you are whatever it is you're conscious of being already and were before any of this stuff happened. the only reason that stuff is there is because the water takes the shape of the vessel into which it's poured. So I put my consciousness into a state called not good enough, called unwell, called I'm never going to make it, called I'm basically not okay, called you can't get ahead, called if it were you can't trust anybody, whatever it is. Now I've got you son of a bitch. I mean, if my pattern, if my game, if my thing is catching other people trying to get over on me so that I can vent this rage that I have from who knows where in a justifiable way, people will give me that opportunity everywhere, right? Because I'll be attracted to those people. I will perceive everything that goes on as evidence of that. And so that's really where the awareness comes in, is seeing kind of the behind the scenes stuff so that we can stop dealing with the second causes. We can stop looking at the fruits and examining the fruits and saying, okay, well, what's this? This is really bad. This isn't good. We can actually start looking at the roots. You know what I'm saying? At some point, if you're going to change this stuff, it really does involve shifting your focus from the fruits to the roots. Now, fruits are interesting. Fruits are captivating. Everyone wants to pay attention to them. They grab your attention. They're designed to be noticed. Why? So that you can eat them and then scatter the seeds elsewhere so that it can be more of the same stuff. You see these patterns are perpetuative. You want to examine the roots. You want to examine the seeds. You want to examine really where it comes from, because that's the origin of all of this stuff. And it's this internal stuff. It's these patterns of consciousness and of thinking and of being aware of being certain. I mean, that's where it is. It's all going on with you. And when you become convinced of that, you really start to find this stuff and you see it for yourself. There's no belief involved. There's no like faith in us or in our teaching or whatever. It's not that. That's never been the point. The point is, notice what you notice when you see what you see when you start watching. You know what I mean? When you start observing, there are things that you can, and then we give you a framework. We basically give you like a field guide so that when you go out into your experience and you see a monarch butterfly, you can look at the field guide and say, oh, according to this, that's a monarch butterfly. That's interesting. According to this, that's a meeting assignment. Oh, look at this is a pattern of focusing. Oh, okay, I think this would probably be a belief here. Oh, this is definitely an away from value. This seems like sorting by impossibility, so that you can kind of navigate. It's kind of like a map. You know where you are, you know where you're going. But the experiences, though, you see yourself. You don't, hallucinate stuff because we told you it was there. You go out and it's either there or it isn't. And then you kind of categorize it. And then you build your awareness around that. And then you make your decisions on the basis of your awareness. And then you create your experience and you learn from that. And it's a very kind of organic, real thing. It's not bullshit. It's not, New York Times bestseller, like, number 300 of this year, change your life forever, and you won't need another book again. And there's like 70 of them that come out every year. That's not it. This is actually the solution, and the solution is waking up, and the solution is becoming aware, and the solution is really engaging lovingly with everything about what it's like to be you. It's about realizing that all the shit that people told you was important doesn't matter nearly as much as they thought it did. It's all about you and your consciousness and awareness of being. And when you really figure out kind of how to tap into that, move consciously in that realm, everything else, all of the problems, when you change the root, you change the fruit. Really, truly, when you change what's going on in the unseen, under the ground, you change the stuff that germinates above ground, the experiences, the results, the relationships, all of that stuff. Yeah,
and that's really what the Resolve community is all about, is let's take these conflicts, these like known conflicts that Dr. Hammer discovered. Okay, isolation, refugee, abandonment. When you experience that, your body closes off your kidney collecting tubule so you retain water. And so what is that experience made out of? Because if I'm retaining water and I don't want to be, and here I am conscious of retaining water, and I've got these conflicts going on in the background of my mind, I've got to bring them to the forefront. I've got to understand them. I've got to see what they're made out of and say, oh, okay, so I can recognize that. I recognize that element in my experience. I definitely have some of that element in my experience. And then breaking down and understanding, how can I become aware of these patterns of interaction with the world? Because a lot of them, they were established very early on in your experience of being a human. You saw, you were left somewhere that set up a pattern, and then you had certain beliefs about yourself and the world and other people, and those are still active and they're operating. And so what we've done with the Resolve community is take these principles, these things that we talk about, awareness, the ever better thought technology, and we apply it specifically to biological conflicts and these programs that we have running in our bodies that we'd like some way out of. We'd like to change our perception so that our body can change its response to our experience so that we can heal, so that our skin can clear, so that we can, get rid of all this excess water we're holding on to, so that we can break out of this pattern of self-devaluation that's causing terrible pain. And so that's what the Resolve community is all about. And it really is such a phenomenal place to be if you really want to understand your experience, if you really want to understand conflicts, if you want to resolve conflicts, if you want to understand yourself. That's really what we created it for. And so we're just super excited because we just launched on September 1st the new module that's all about abandonment, isolation, and refugee conflicts, which are water retention conflicts. Next month, we already have that one underway. It's going to be all about existence conflicts. And so like fear of death, and all the things that come along with that, fear of, scarcity and not having enough resources financially, and how that can manifest as water retention also. So yeah, I'm so excited, and I don't think we talk enough in these groups about how awesome Resolve really is and how one of a kind it is. So if you are interested in this stuff, if you want to know more about yourself, your experience, if you are a health coach, and you want to be using this in your practice and understanding people and their experiences, it's a one of a kind type of program. And so I'm personally very proud of it. I'm very excited about it. The people that are in it and do the work see the results. They understand themselves. They get into this nitty-gritty stuff, this awareness generating, like the roots. It's not all the pretty fruits, but the fruits come when you really focus on this deep inner work and you focus on the roots. And so check it out. If you are sparked by this, there's definitely really good stuff in there for you.
Inner Circle too, big time, which is Resolve Plus, largely for practitioners or for people who are super interested in
health coaching.
All the things we kind of alluded to here about understanding people and how they work, including most importantly you, or in my case me. We just did we did these live. Every part of the Resolve is that we do these live deep dives, and if you're in the Inner Circle, you get the Resolve Plus kind of a practitioner deep dive as well. And we did a recap where we made bonus material on top of. There's a huge amount of material. We read people sometimes who make monthly kind of membership programs and stuff, and it's seriously 10 times the amount of content that you'll find in pretty much any membership thing I know of. And we're doing these notes from the lives too. So we'll do these live videos like this, and then you get a kind of because we are all over the place. We cover some really cool stuff, but you open up a door and it's there's 75 doors on that hallway. We want to give you a chance really to be able to reference that stuff. And so especially in the Inner Circle, how many pages of additional content? It was about 70 pages. So an additional 70 pages of. So if you're really interested in learning to work with this stuff at a deep level, it's a tremendous opportunity to do that. Mm-hmm. There's nothing else in the world really, I don't think, that will deliver this level of content, this depth of content. Because frankly, there's not a lot of people who think you can handle it. Honestly, that my kind of respect and regard for and confidence in you and the people who take our stuff is the reason that I ignore every internet marketing source in the world and just deliver everything that I think you can possibly handle, which is everything that I can come up with. I don't say, well, they can't handle that. I think that's ridiculous. What kind of a relationship is that? You know what I'm saying? And so I think that that has the basis or the potential to be a profoundly productive relationship where we really deliver at a super high standard because we know that is what you're capable of absorbing and receiving and of making really wonderful use of. And I think that's just kind of a unique thing and a cool thing, and it's so much fun to share that with you guys. And so if you haven't checked out Resolve, definitely do it. If you're interested in the deep stuff, check out the Inner the They also get access to the Ever Go to Life course, right?
Yes.
Which is huge.
Which is crazy, yeah.
Which is another tremendous amount of information on a monthly basis. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I think if you have any questions about maybe you want to move forward and you don't know exactly what to do, send us a message. I think we can figure out exactly kind of what the optimal combination of things for you is.
Yeah, it's just getting the tools in your hands and starting to use them because, it's amazing what you can do with your consciousness. And I had no idea. And believe me, if you're struggling with some of this stuff, I was struggling even more when I first try to start getting aware, but these building blocks are so essential and they're so helpful, and that's really what they're there for, is to help people access and actually use the brilliance that Dr. Hammer created in the discoveries of all these biological special programs. It's oh my God, this this is amazing. But like, I'm having this experience and I don't know how to get rid of it. And I've tried, like, I knowing about it hasn't like made it fall away yet. And so it's like at that point, then we've got to dig into this perceptual stuff, and we've got to go into the unseen land of the mind and start to really understand what that's made out of. And that's what the Ever Better Life course and all of the Resolve material is really all about. So it's awesome, and you should check it out if it's like, if it lights you up, if you're like really passionate about this stuff, or really passionate about like getting better, then this is certainly definitely for you. And yeah, let us know if you need anything. We love you guys. Have a great night, and we'll see you again soon.